The lesser Hippias, or Hippias Minor, may be compared with the earlier dialogues of Plato, in which the contrast of Socrates and the Sophists is most strongly exhibited. Hippias, like Protagoras and Gorgias, though civil, is vain and boastful. He is of a lighter nature than the two great Sophists, but of the same character with them, and equally impatient of the method of Socrates, whom he endeavours to draw into a long oration. The dialogue begins with a conversation between Socrates and Hippias about the works of Homer. Hippias says that Homer intended Achilles to be the bravest and Odysseus to be the wisest of the Greeks. But he is easily overthrown by the superior dialectics of Socrates, who pretends to show that Achilles is not true to his word, and that no similar inconsistency is to be found in Odysseus. Hippias replies that Achilles unintentionally, but Odysseus intentionally speaks falsehood. But is it better to do wrong intentionally or unintentionally? Socrates, relying on the analogy of the arts, maintains the former, Hippias the latter of the two alternatives. All this is quite conceived in the spirit of Plato, who is very far from making Socrates always argue on the side of truth. The over-reasoning on Homer, which is of course satirical, is also in the spirit of Plato. Poetry turned logic is even more ridiculous than rhetoric turned logic, and equally fallacious. There were some in ancient as well as in modern times who could never receive the natural impression of Homer or of any other book which they read. The argument of Socrates, in which he picks out the apparent inconsistencies in the speech and actions of Achilles, and the final paradox that he who is true is also false, reminds us of the interpretation by Socrates of Simonides in the Protagoras, and of similar reasonings in the first book of the Republic. The discrepancies which Socrates discovers in the words of Achilles are perhaps as great as those discovered by some of the modern separatists of the Homeric poems. At last, Socrates, having caught Hippias in the toils of the voluntary and involuntary, is obliged to confess that he is wandering about in the same labyrinth. He makes the reflection on himself which others would make upon him, and he does not wonder that he should be in a difficulty, but he wonders at Hippias, and he becomes sensible of the gravity of the situation, when ordinary men like himself can no longer go to the wise and be taught by them. The conversation comes to a point where it is being implied that the good man is the one who commits evil voluntarily, which neither Socrates nor Hippias agree with. The dialogue ends with Socrates admitting that the conclusion they reached did not satisfy either of them and was perhaps false.